Hi, this is Cindy, and he's finishing up downstairs. Mike will be up in a moment. Welcome everybody to Part-Time Permies live show. And I'm just resetting my screens here. But I'd first like to just start with a verification everybody can hear all right. Hi, Kara. Mike's coming up in a moment. So anyway, so I do want to make sure everyone can hear. I think there's a little bit of a lag going tonight. We also have a lot of wind outside tonight. So hopefully we don't have any streaming problems tonight, but we'll just go through things a bit. Okay, awesome. I just got that confirmation. Seven Sprouts, thank you for letting me know you can hear me. Eventually us, but anyway, so we have actually quite a number of things to go through on our live show tonight. So I guess I will get to our featured forage food. Can't talk yet. Featured foraged food for tonight. We did get a couple postings or questions. I posted on our Facebook page or Facebook group, sorry, a question about if anyone had any questions for Mike about cooking, that they could post them there, and we'll try to touch on everything that comes up there. So I did get a couple questions that we'll touch on later tonight once Mike comes up, because you don't want me to answer those. So once he gets up here, he's just wrapping up. He was making pasta downstairs for the business. So yes, and Wholesome Roots, by the way, has a September challenge going on, which I've been not so great at continuing with, but her September challenge is 10 minutes, is a 10-minute garden challenge. So getting in the garden 10 minutes a day. I seem to get in the garden for half-hour slots or more and then miss a day here or there, but I guess I'm averaging 10 minutes a day. And then post it onto any social media and tag her and hashtag the 10-minute garden challenge. So check out her YouTube channel definitely for that challenge, because we've been trying to keep up with that a little bit. Not the greatest at it, but it has motivated me to get out in the garden, which I spent hours out there today. So, and I hear someone coming upstairs for, hi Mike, he's going to join us in a second. So Big Bear, lightning gotta go. Okay, good to see you. Glad you stopped by. Watch us later. I guess that works too. And Little Creek has just joined. Hello, and hello to everybody else. I've been saying hi as I've been chatting as you guys came in the room. So me and Mom got mine today. I ran and got to work. Okay, got work done in the greenhouse. That's awesome. We were starting to get a little bit. Hello. Yeah, don't pull the chair too far.
Floor's mopped.
The floor's mopped. Yeah, I was just saying you're working on pasta stuff downstairs. You're pulling away from the screen, you know.
It's doing a lot of heavy cleaning.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
moderate cleaning.
Yeah. So don't have to post it, just do it. I know Wholesome Roots, but it's fun if you post it. And most people are on Instagram or Facebook or something. And even if they put it in your chat, in your Wholesome Roots chat on Facebook or whatever you call it, the group on Facebook, then that would work too. So no, it's just a fun challenge. So anyway, we have a bunch of people in the room.
Good.
We have, I think, 10 watching so far. It's cool. We have some new people. Hi, Mandy. You just came in the room. Mean Mom's, I think, new. Either that or has the new. I think I would remember that name. Big Bear stopped by earlier, but could only stay for a minute because they've got storms and I had to get stuff done. And
yeah, schedules seem to be changing around a lot now that we're through Labor Day. Yeah. School and work is getting more serious again for people. My schedule never really changes that much. I push through when it's slow, so I get ahead when everybody else gets back on track. But yeah, I did notice market schedules and just went into stores on Tuesday morning after doing pickups from it was empty, nobody was around, so people are readjusting
And somebody
their
decided to
regular
join us.
schedules.
Helix decided to join us, and Puddin's asleep on the couch behind Mike. So, um, yeah. So Seven Sprouts been in the garden as usual, but just am not filming or editing. Yeah,
I
too
don't
many
film much of
projects.
anything.
No,
I
I
got
film
work to
him.
do.
I do the filming. I film him sometimes when he's. We did get outside a little bit and did a video that will go up hopefully this week. Actually, I should say, I think I either recorded or finished recording 4 videos today. So I have to get those edited throughout the week. Hopefully I'll get at least 3 of them done this week. Maybe one will be early next week, but we'll see. So we have a lot of things coming up. This last week I know I only got 1 video done. It was clicker training for Jello. So we have a video. I'll show you at least the title here. It's the loading the clicker.
You see that the t-shirt link is coming up with a blank page?
Oh no. Thank you. I will double check that, but I don't think I could change it until after the show.
Yeah, not for an hour or so or more.
It's if you go I'll actually I could show you the page. That's not a good thing. Okay. So, yes, we do have a t-shirt uh uh sale, and it won't work if we actually can't get to the t-shirts, can we?
Yeah, so if you're looking for a part-time Permies t-shirt
Yes.
or a general clothing device or garden or sleep or in public,
T-shirt, sweatshirt, long sleeve, short
so
sleeve. We have a whole variety of them with our logo on it.
we think they're pretty good quality, not overly pricey.
Yeah,
So
so
a lot
we'll get
cheaper than
that.
your favorite rock band shirt at $60 or whatever they charge. I haven't tried to buy one in a while.
No, I think these are like 20. The hoodie sweatshirt
Yeah,
might be
and then
closer to
yeah,
35. Um,
so it's
I thought I had somewhere in my
bonfire.
bonfire. There we go. Um, so I'll show you the web page. Maybe I can link it actually. Uh, I'll work on linking that, but we did have, yeah, no, I have to link get the link from them.
My sister figured it out. Looks like she bought 2 shirts.
Oh, cool. Yes, we have had sales. I hadn't checked that since in about 2 days, so that's awesome.
It's got a Dane on it. She likes things with Danes.
Yeah, it does have a Dane on our logo, doesn't it? Anyway, we also had the questions about cooking. So I will try to get a link into the chat here in a minute. But we had questions about 2 questions for you about cooking, and a lot of things that have been going on this week. So why don't you start with the questions? We had one from Tina Marie who said she would like to learn how to make roux, and wanted some info on that. So I guess that would be a good place to
Tina
start.
Marie's here, right? I think I saw.
I'm not sure. Or we have Teresa Wheeler who's
chat again.
Yeah, I'm pulling up. Is Tina Marie in the room yet? She may not be yet.
Oh, Terry's here. I saw a T. So okay, so Terry's here. That's different.
Yeah.
So it's 3 T's. Tina's asked a question. Teresa's asked a question.
Oh, there's 50 chickens in a hen house. Hello.
If anybody else has a
cooking
question that we can tackle without too much time, we can do that. Occasionally I'm stumped and we'll do the research, but generally we can
do a video on it.
We can talk about it. Yep. So the first question is how to make a roux. So a roux is a thickening device, one of a number of thickening methods, and it basically uses a starch, a refined or semi-refined starch, such as flour, and butter or fat. It really just uses a fat. So when you try and thicken things, you're thinking about gravy, sauces, soups, custards, whatever. There's lots. So it's typically, originally was done with finely ground nuts, cooked bread that was reground up and pureed, vegetable matter, like pureed vegetable matter, or other things. So then about 200-ish years ago, started using roux because we had refined flour, as in white wheat flour. So what you do is you want the white flour to expand, so it takes on water and it thickens. However, we know that when you mix flour together or dry substances, they clump, and the clumping causes lumps in your gravy or other sauces. So you want to get around that. So you want to thicken and expand your starches and hydrate them without causing lumps. Therefore, you mix your starch with fat, most often some form of rendered animal fat that would be left over from a project, like say you're roasting meat and you want to make gravy, pan gravy, you've got fat coming off of that, or you use something like butter or vegetable oil. So you would take warm fat, relatively warm fat, and then melted butter. Ideally, if you're using butter, many times you want clarified butter. That means you remove the water and the extra protein. Two reasons: the protein can burn if it gets too hot. The water can somewhat affect the hydration of the starch once you put the fat in. So you're trying to get the fat around all these little granules of starch or flour so that you lubricate them so they don't form little dumplings. So that is the basis of why you're using roux and why roux is helpful. Gluten-free roux. Yes, you can use other starches. Interestingly, the roux or the gluten is a major component of the protein. Protein actually skims off in the cooking process, has to cook out, and you skim that off and throw it away. So gluten is not a necessary product for roux. So using a low quality or low protein, low gluten flour, wheat flour would be fine. Using a non-wheat, non-gluten item also would generally be fine. Different starches will take on different amounts of liquid and fat. That's the only thing that will change. But yes, you are not stuck doing roux with glutinous products. So what you're going to do is you got a couple options. You're basically going to warm up your fat. You're going to put in your flour. It's about 1-to-1 by weight. However, most of us are measuring in cups or teaspoons, which means you're going to want to use approximately for like a quarter cup of flour. You're going to use actually you're going to use a little more than a quarter cup of flour for a quarter cup of fat. If you can scale it out, even better. You can do it by eye. If you do it by eye and it's starting to warm up, it should look sandy, like brown beach sand that you have wet and it kind of clumps together and you're building a sandcastle with it. That's a good consistency. Not too much butter or fat, not too much flour.
Can you do other flours if someone's trying to avoid wheat?
That's what we just talked about.
I know you were doing gluten-free, but what other flour?
Wheat is the only flour that has gluten in it.
Yeah.
I know that's a surprise to a lot of people.
Well, others are sometimes
some
ground
have,
area.
yeah, they could be ground in the same mill or ground in the same area, or there's gluten and gliadin. You can have some of the subcomponents in other items, but in general, you do not have a complete gluten in anything other than wheat-derived product. So yes, you could use other flours. Again, they're going to take on different amounts of liquid and different amounts of fat, but be experimental. It could also affect flavor. Whole wheat is a less quality or less useful product. You want a more refined item. So, so you heat them up. It gets to a wet, sandy amount. And there are actually 3 types of roux. The first type is called a blonde roux or a white roux. You basically just take the fat and stir in the flour until it gets to the sandy mass. And then you pour in your warm liquid. You should have a warm liquid, ideally.
Hi, Tina.
Just one warning, do not put hot roux, because roux with no water in it, as it gets hotter and hotter, will be above the boiling point, which means it can superheat the water. So if you have boiling liquid, like a boiling soup, and you have above boiling roux, you're going to end up with a little volcanic explosion, which may end up on your hands or face. So warm is good. Otherwise, if one is very hot, make sure the other one is not very hot, and you'll be just fine. So you stir them in approximately, I got to remember my ratios. I teach all this stuff for beginning and advanced culinary and stuff at times, food science. It is approximately 2 ounces of roux per quart, I want to say. That seems a little heavy. I think it's 2 ounces of finished roux. So 1 ounce of flour, 1 ounce of fat to thicken a quart to a medium thickness. So you're looking at about a cup of roux total cup of roux, that's the fat in the flour, not a cup of flour, to thicken a gallon. But again, it depends on if you want a light, just nappe or thin, like a very thin coating sauce, or you want a super thick, home style gravy. So you can thicken stock, you can thicken water, vegetable stock, you can thicken milk. That way you can make pudding basically. Roux is could be made, or flour for pudding.
Okay.
However, once you get it in there, you need to let it cook for 15 to 20 minutes because it's an unrefined starch, meaning it's not just starch, it's got protein and other stuff in it. So you need that floury flavor to cook out. And if you do it right, you won't have too much of the fat break and come to the top, but you skim off any of the scum or protein, you skim off any of the excess fat, you let it cook out, you make sure it doesn't taste starchy, floury, and that it's fully thickened. And so that makes a roux. So you have blonde roux. You can cook it more so it turns kind of brownish, hazelnut, little nutty smell. That is nice if you're doing a gravy like a poultry gravy or pork gravy. You want a little color and flavor added to it. And then you can do brown roux, which is chocolatey, dark chocolatey but not burned, nutty, and that's for like a beef. And actually, the more you cook them, the less they'll thicken slightly. So that's your classic, because you start to break down the starches as you get to a brown roux.
Okay.
So you start with blonde, which doesn't really matter what you make it with, what type of fat. It's got a little water in there because you're not really cooking it. As you toast it and get it really hot, this hazelnut, and you got to stir it constantly, otherwise it'll burn quickly. So your bechamel, your Alfredo, your cheese sauce, your sous vide, all those things are made with the blonde roux because you're using cream. Veloutes, which are flavorful stocks and liquids that are thickened, also are blonde. And then as you move into your meat gravies or roasted vegetable gravies and jus, you start going to the brown, starting to use the hazelnut brown roux and the dark roux. And then in New Orleans, they do black roux, where you cook it in an oven, or you start and you make it dark, 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 almost burned but not burned, and that's for gumbo. And that's the only place you use that. In a French kitchen or anywhere else, if you make roux that dark, you screwed up. They make you throw it away, and they laugh at you. But in New Orleans cooking and making gumbo, it is
you want it that
appropriate.
dark.
So it's a sort of a simple but complicated topic. So we back up real quick. So the disadvantages is you have to cook it out. It's not fully refined, so you have stuff that rises to the top. You need to add in a reasonable amount of fat, which can increase the flavor and be nice, but you're adding a lot of fat or it could break out of the sauce. Once you cool it and reheat it a few times, or it sits for hours cooking on a stove like you're serving in a restaurant, it tends to break down. So those are all negatives because it's not a perfect starch. The simpler way to do things, but not always the tastier way, or to get around the fat, is to make a slurry. So a slurry is a refined starch. So that's for cornstarch, arrowroot, even rice starch.
Okay.
Is mixed in water, and you just temporarily suspend it in water so it looks like heavy cream, kind of thick but not too thick, no clumps. Same purpose. You're trying to remove all of remove the chunks so you don't get chunks, and then you take a hot liquid, near boiling liquid, stirring that liquid fairly aggressively. You pour in your starch, and it takes much, much less than the cup or so per gallon. You're talking like a quarter of it. That then returns to a boil or a near boil. Certain things cook differently, and it will thicken quickly. Advantages of that is it goes very quick, like 5 minutes instead of 20 minutes of cooking. You don't add any fat. You're not adding any flavor though, but you're also adding in a very neutral flavor. And coloration. So roux has a opaque look to it. And then cornstarch is kind of off-white, creamy when it's cooked out. Arrowroot's almost clear. But each starch has not only a different flavor and behavior, they have different structures like gloppy. So like arrowroot, if you use a little more than, like if you go towards a thick sauce, it gets gloppy and it kind of goes thick and then it goes gloop and it drops and it's a nasty consistency. Although in Asia that's very popular. So
I want to say hi to Aim High and thanks for stopping by Wholesome Roots.
Rose, yep.
So yeah, so I hope we gave you some ideas, Rose, before you had to take off on that.
Yep.
And Tina, hubby is from NOLA.
Yeah, New Orleans.
Okay. Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so black root, look it up. You're basically going to stir it all together, put it in an oven, and bake it at like 300, 350 for sometimes a couple of hours. In a
Oh my
hotel where
gosh.
you have it running all the time, you have huge ovens. You just stick it in there. You stir it occasionally, and it's going to get very, very dark and break down. It's going to be greasy on top. You're actually
Mm,
going to have the oil break on the top, and it's going to do a little less thickening power.
mm.
Um, yeah, arrowroot is expensive compared to cornstarch, but it's clear. The problem is cornstarch you can get medium thick. Arrowroot you can only get moderate, light, kind of a medium to light thickening because then it gets really gloppy and unappealing. Um, so each and it gets much more technical. So you move out of culinary skills into food science, but starches have straight chains and branch chains, sort of like trees and things depending
Yeah.
on how branched it is and how straight, what it looks like, how it responds. Does it get very gloppy, or is it, that all changes based upon the structure, and that leads into all the mega corporations that do specialty refined starches. They make starches, and then you get gums and gels, which are do the same thing but are not
Oh my gosh.
starches.
Hi
So
guys.
there.
Okay, so we have a
Yep.
few people joining us. Suburban Hillbilly, hello. If I didn't, I think I just saw you come in. Northern Ohio Homestead, welcome. And that 1870s Homestead, hello, hello. Kiri, did I see you already? Hello. I think I saw you
Mm-hmm.
as Mike was talking. And Valerie. Awesome, you
Oh, and I
guys.
got one last thing on that, by the way.
Oh boy.
So if you're making roux, don't overdo it because it's hard to back up unless you got more stock. You want to make a ton of it.
Yeah.
Um, so go a little light. You can always have your cooked out roux and add a little more, but you got to keep cooking it. It is okay to thicken a sauce or a gravy primarily with your roux and then decide it's not quite thick enough and touch it with just a little cornstarch or arrowroot, which will finish it much faster. And interestingly, the flavor and the nice texture and sort of the silkiness of roux, people don't work with roux a lot because it's harder and they think it's old fashioned, but actually, good chefs still like doing it. And so then what you end up doing with the cornstarch or arrowroot, you get this shimmery, shiny, you get a different textural look. And putting the two together, not only is
Yeah.
it convenient to finish that way, but it can make really beautiful sauce work.
I made gravy with arrowroot and it looks like white slime.
Too much. Yeah, you don't need very much at all.
Yeah.
And it's the slime factor, which is really gross to the American palate. In Asia, a lot of soups are served
Yeah.
very, very thickened and slimy and gloppy, and it's desirable, but we haven't really developed that taste. It's not a taste, it's a
A
textural
texture
thing.
thing. Yeah.
So be really careful with arrowroot. You can always add more. It goes in almost instantly. You don't even have to bring arrowroot to a full boil and within 5 minutes it's at full strength.
Yep.
So I like cornstarch because it's really cheap. I don't mind arrowroot, but again, the gloppiness, and I like a slightly thicker nappe on my standard sauce sometimes. I don't mind working with either. Then there's something that's really fun. You might find if you want to play, it's called um, methyl cellulose,
Oh,
which cellulose is wood pulp. It's
right.
vegetable fiber.
Yeah.
They have methylated it, meaning it has a group that wants to grab onto water,
Yeah.
and it does pretty well with. So it is a form of a modified food starch. It's fully edible. It's fairly natural, and you can use very minute amounts of it, teaspoons.
Huh.
And it will, if you need to blend it in a blender or a stick. I mean, you can't just stir it in. You got to blend it. It's called shearing, and that will work hot or cold. And assuming that your liquid doesn't have gelatin or something in it, as it thickens and gets stiffer, it will also respond to the same thickness, hot or cold. So you could thicken orange juice
Huh.
and suspend chunks of like orange pulp in it. And whether it was hot or cold, it would stay exactly the same.
That's
It's
interesting.
no flavor, absolutely clear. It's a little expensive, but not really. A lot of the gluten-free items have a little methylcellulose, or xanthan gum works the same. It's a natural gum, you use them the same way. A lot of the gluten-free uses it for a little bit of binding power and baking. So if you really want to get inventive and play with it, try xanthan gum or methyl cellulose powder. Um,
Hillbilly. The suburban hillbilly says gravy, fat, flour, and milk.
There's nothing better than making roux. I
Yeah.
mean, I was a saucier, did a lot of saucier work. There are professionals that do it as their full-time
Yeah.
job that are more advanced in sort of classical cooking. Overall, I'm a fairly experienced sauce, doing sauces. In most kitchens, I am, if it's not the executive chef, or even if it is, frequently I am commissioned to do the sauce work because I'm pretty good at it
Yeah.
and know more about
And you
it.
know the
So
science behind it. That helps.
yeah, and I know, and I've done it's making good sauces, doing it all the time, and doing a lot of it, and having a decent palate, and being methodical about replicating or knowing how to fix things, which brings us on to what, acidity in tomatoes.
Yes, that 1870s home
Cutting
said
the acidity in tomatoes.
when canning fresh tomato sauce.
Okay, acidity is usually good. Different types of acidity. Um,
Well, you need the
well,
acidity
you
in
need the
canning,
acidity in there for the canning, but you can do that through adding your
the
supplemental
flavor though.
acids or lemon juice. By the way, different acids act differently and taste differently. So just because something's acidic from the tomato, actually adding lemon juice to it may not change the flavor. It may affect it better. Lemon juice appears bright. Citrus juice is bright. Our brain. So if something tastes boring and muted, you check the salt. You add salt if needed. You check the sugar. You add sugar. If salt, sugar, whatever is okay, flavors are there, but it just kind of tastes flat, it's probably missing acid. So using wine vinegar, cider vinegar, or lemon juice do different things to brighten and wake things up flavor-wise, and citrus juice is beautiful that. So some tomato sauces have a little either wine vinegar or even citrus in them. That's if you have a really sweet end of summer, not acidic enough tomato. Don't be afraid to add in some type of. Just watch the balsamic; it gets really dark, even though it tastes good. Red wine vinegar is fine, and you don't need
So what about
expensive ones.
lowering
So
the
lowering
acid
the
flavor?
acid, if it's a really long cooked sauce, like you cooked it 3 or 4 hours, old style, tomato sauce gravy, then it can cook down and create more acids as plant material and meat material tends to break down. The amino acids and the core components break down, and the offshoot of those things breaking down is acidic.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer you cook something, the more naturally acidic it gets. And tomato sauce can bother people's stomachs or just taste too acidic. So I would try adding a touch of red wine vinegar and balancing it. By the way, just because something's acidic, especially if it bothers your stomach, a really tart green apple or a little bit of lemon juice, actually can take away indigestion because it turns on your acid pumps and overcomes the the indigestion, which is a little different. I learned that from a chef, and I said I don't believe that, and it's totally true.
It's basically sending a feedback uh, mechanism to shut it
Versus
down.
trying to buffer it with antacids. So
Yeah.
the first thing I would do if I feel like it's just really acidic is maybe the sugar content is low in the sauce or in the tomatoes. They're too wet and they didn't develop enough sugar. Add sugar.
Like this fall, we've been getting a ton of
They're
rain.
really wet. The
They're
wrong
really
type
wet.
of variety if you're cooking a lot of like slicing tomatoes and they're not paste or more sauce tomatoes, they're a little more acidic. Um, or something. They could be really wet, and I would add sugar. And so sugar can be in many forms: white sugar, brown sugar, even things like balsamic is sweet, but again changes the color.
That's a
Um,
new question. Sorry. I get.
so I would look at first considering adding sugar because if it's not physically bothering you, um, then try, but it's aesthetically or flavor wise tasting off balance, add a sweet component. Um, the next thing that you could do is if it's bothering is you could, yeah.
Lemon juice, sugar, and salt, but still had that punch
Well, you're
that
well on
kind of.
your way to the, and you use rum. You're well on your way to the good. And did you cook this? Is this like a 3 hour cook, or is this a hour cook, or um, if so, long cooking could change it. So the other thing is, if you're like, all right, this just isn't right, you could try hitting it with cream and turning it into a tomato cream sauce, or even just a little cream. So let's talk about classic French sauce tomate. Starts with onion, carrot, and celery. Believe it or not, tomatoes. Cook it all out. It has It has cook it down. You puree it all. Classical tomato sauces are always pureed, but we tend to do more chunky ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you've got the roux in there doing some buffering and flavoring and mellowing. It may even have a little bit of demi or bone, roasted bone stock in there. So you're talking a really rich sauce. And at the very end, you hit it with a touch of cream. Now the cream, as it cooks out, will still stay. It won't even be that pinky. It'll be still pretty red. But and we're talking heavy cream. Um, Heavy cream and adding the dairy in there can really take some of that heavy burn and acidic if it's just really biting the back of your mouth. And there's nothing else you can do. I know it's adding a totally different component. Add some heavy cream, which probably means going to the store because most of us don't keep heavy cream. Just like restaurants, you live with it. But
Unless you have a cow.
yeah, but I would try heavy cream as a last resort. And you could always turn into like a tomato vodka or a tomato, and that should do it. Sugar or cream, and I think you'll be happy with it. It's definitely savable. Tomato sauce is always savable, always fixable unless you burn it. And if you burn it a little bit, you dump it out quickly without scraping the bottom to a new pan. Cross your fingers that the burn doesn't taste. And if the burn shows through, you're stuck. You throw it away because there's nothing will save it. You're just wasting your time once you get a heavy burn.
Yeah.
So.
Hey guys, I posted it earlier, but I just posted again the link to the t-shirts that we're selling. If you want to buy any, you can take that link to those t-shirts. Um, Otherwise, I just want to check. We do have some other things to talk about. We could come back to some cooking things at the
Oh,
end
and I
if you
got
like.
one more thing, by the way, I forgot. Classic tomato sauce is cooked down. They don't use paste. They just cook it down, cook it down, cook it down, which takes forever.
Yeah,
You gotta have the right
6 hours.
tomatoes. That's a long cook. So I think I find a brighter sauce and can get really acidic. I like a sauce in 1 to 3 hours. Now, partly in a restaurant, it's going to sit on the line longer and continue to cook. I think 6 hours is very doable, but it can get. I think you're developing the acid from the cooking. Um, Tomato paste. Tomatoes are very important. Tomato paste is more important than what type of tomato. You don't need San Marzano. You don't need imported. Obviously, your garden tomatoes are great, whatever they are. Um,
She's using Roma's.
Roma's is kind of your classic because they're not mealy and stuff. But high quality paste, sweet paste. Red Pack does a pretty good job. A lot of U.S. brands are just fine. And in fact, Red Pack is one of the highest rating, at least according to Cooks Illustrated over the years, and moderately priced. But the paste can be bitter, and paste traditionally was cooked down, pureed, sun dried on the roof in Italy, and so it actually dehydrated, concentrated, slightly fermented, and got really sweet and baked in the sun. You can buy that. It's very expensive. That's probably going to be an import product. There's a couple companies starting to do that. Using that type of product adds tons of depth and sweetness. So if you're doing that, and it comes in like a tube, it doesn't come in a can. That is what may differentiate a really good Italian sauce and how they handle their tomatoes. Totally different than we tend to. So yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on who was it? Northern Ohio Homestead was asking for general tips about starting a homestead. Really, we started here just 4 years ago, I guess now, coming this winter, and it's start small but keep trying things. I would try. I would build it up one step at a time. Once you get one thing done, next year try something new, but be willing to experiment with things.
Yeah, Justin Rose was talking about that. Don't take on more than 1 to 3 projects new a year until you figure those out because they're going to cost you time and money and problems and not work the way you thought. And you just need to adjust to it. So you want to add in based upon your experience. Um, you know,
But just do it too. Just go for it. Pick which things you want to try.
We don't have any heavy animals. We have about 30 to 40 chickens. We range between 20 and 40 chickens most of the time.
And a couple geese.
What we rotate them around over about an acre-ish area, and that's about all that grass in the summer can handle. So if we were to put more poultry, we'd start going to a traditional farmyard that was a mud pit, and while it could still work fine, we would not be supplementing feed. We would be having to manage water control and somewhat poo, and definitely be supplemental feeding, which we can't grow. So We have more acreage, but some of it's front and some of it's back.
We have about 3 acres
I would say
of
go
woods.
light. Yeah,
Yeah.
go light with what you have, and also consider: do you have a dog? Do you have kids?
Yeah.
How are you managing it? And do you want it walkable, livable portions of it, or all of it, or are you good with some of it
Yeah.
becoming more of a penned
And
area?
the other thing I would do is if you're in a first year of doing this, don't do anything new the first year. Just see what you have out there. Maybe small garden or something, but just see what you have.
Poultry you can always do in a modest
A
amount
small
because they're
amount.
pretty light on the
Yeah.
land.
But you
Um,
want to see where you want to place things, where you want to put a coop. If you need a stationary
mhm.
coop, or do you want to do a chicken tractor, or do you want to do something with your gardens where you're incorporating the coop with your gardens so that you might be able to say rotate, put the coop in the middle, put two garden slots slash runs on either side, and 1 year you have your chickens on one side, and the
So
next year you have
just
it on the
Justin
other.
Rhodes talked about that. They've done a lot of remanagement this year after being on the road, and they're still
Yeah,
remanaging from this year for next year. The other thing is permaculture design
yeah,
talks about zoning and creating proximities and relationships. So
yeah.
using go find some of the permaculture design stuff, and then the How to Grow More Than You Ever Thought Possible
Possible is
book,
a
which
good
we
book
recommend
too.
all the time.
This
That
book is good too. I'm okay. I do have some
I think
kits.
that one is there's for the bang for the buck and the
Yeah,
smallest book with the best information.
that's Bill
That's
Molson's
like the number
Introduction to
one
Permaculture.
training book. How to Grow More Than Ever Thought Possible on Less Space. That's primarily garden
That's
driven,
John Jevons. Yeah,
although it does have a little bit of talking about introducing animals. The nice thing is introducing animals, their feeding and their manure and their work actually increases vegetable yield. It doesn't decrease it. So growing vegan or without animals is harder on the land than growing with animals. But they have nice schematics in the back for families of 4 years, 1 through 3, on intensively planting calorie crops and fruit trees in very small areas. So if you're looking at land management for your gardens
yeah,
and how amazingly tight you can handle things, that book for like 19 bucks
yeah,
will really blow your mind on gardens. And then you start introducing how you're going to
yeah,
manage animal activity. And I think you can get a pretty good picture between that and Bill Mollison for $40. That will keep you busy for the next 3 years, I
yeah.
think,
Absolutely.
on
But keep efficiency in mind. What you need closest to the house. Like you want your herbs closest to the house. You want your things that your kitchen garden. You want that within reach of your house. If you're going to do low tunnels in the winter, having that somewhere close to the house so you don't have to trek through snow if you're in a northern climate, things like that. Just keeping in
and
mind
then
what,
talking to a lot of your neighbors. I mean, 1870s homestead has taken on a lot of new projects
yeah,
and building out their land, as well as taking on more animals than we have in the last year. So they're really good to talk to because they're new and figuring out what's working and what they're readjusting. I think time wise, figuring out your time, which is something that
how much,
Lily House and Mike talks about, is people launching into projects, getting them set up, and then running out of time.
mm-hmm.
You have to figure out how much time you have to actively manage it at the times it needs, and then really how much do you need. We have 20 to 40 chickens. I think we're running more than we need.
Yeah, yeah,
So that means we're spending more time caring for them, a little more, and we're paying to feed them, and we're getting excess eggs. We're not much of the time, which is fine. We use them as gifts, but figuring out, God, a pig is a lot. I mean, getting a cow, a family can do a couple of pigs a year, but you can, and then you add in, say 1 chicken a week or one and
yeah,
a half, 2 chickens a week, and then you add in, cow, you're probably not eating it, but they can produce 4 to 8 gallons of milk, I believe. A commercial cow, I think, puts almost eight
yeah.
gallons of milk. So let's say a pastured one is less, but can you really handle milking twice a day and getting 4 to 6 gallons of milk? And what the heck? We could
No,
not.
no, no.
We don't do a gallon of milk. So unless you're making
I don't
cheese,
drink that much milk
we
anyway.
like it, but we would never be
Yeah,
able to deal with a cow
yeah.
because it would be a waste
Hi,
of
Teresa.
efficiency.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big consideration.
Yeah, so I did, and I haven't put together all the what they call kits here, but I did link a web page. You could just use this for ideas. If you click on anything on the web page, it goes to Amazon to that item, and yeah, we would get a commission if you purchase it. But you can use it for ideas too. But this web page that I just posted on kit.com will list the things that we use, and I'm still building what they call kits on there. I have some about foraging. I have some chicken tools and garden tools, and I'll put some gardening books up there that we've been using and we talk about a lot. So keep your eye on that if you're interested in some of these things we talk about. I do have a link for that below in the description as well.
So you're looking at primarily gardens, berries, fruit trees, flowers, thinking about chickens and ducks. That's
Yes,
exactly what we do.
that's pretty much it.
We
Yep.
have 5 acres. You could do
Food
all of what
forest.
we're doing on 2 acres. You wouldn't need 5, I
Yeah.
think, depending on how much you can use your front yard on zoning.
I think pretty much we use 2 of our 5 acres
Two,
for we're planning on doing food forest on our front acre, and we have gardens and chickens on our and yard on our back
and
acre.
the rest of it's wooded, so we
Yeah.
use it for other,
For foraging.
but we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so using, by the way, you can grow on, it's like 1,000 or 2,000, I forget the schematics on grow more than you ever thought possible. Intensively growing for a family of 4, now a lot of it's potatoes and onions and fruit trees. It is, I think, a half an acre or a quarter acre. You absolutely shocking. You can how much you can get everything in there, and then if you're intermixing, see, we use our chickens in at beginning and end of season in our gardens to fortify and dig them, and then eat the excess.
Fertilize.
And then we rotate them around our secondary grassy yard area,
Yeah.
and then we fortified our back secondary like high grass area, and we put them back there much of the summer. So they're moving all over, so they are enhancing the grounds and digging holes, which we trip in occasionally.
Yeah, the holes are the downfall probably to it, but
So you can increase your gardening as long as you keep the ducks and chickens out of the portions of garden that
you're
are actively
using.
growing, because one, that can be somewhat dangerous health wise, salmonella or E. coli or things, but also they're just going to eat everything. They'll eat the entire garden in like 3 days, and then you'll be out of a garden. So fence, we just use 6 foot rolled chicken fence and T-posts, or not chicken fence,
chicken fence.
hardware cloth.
Welded wire.
Welded wire, yes. And then we have some deer fence, some 6, 7, 8 foot deer fence.
Welded wire fencing works a lot better than the deer fence. Guess who I found in our gardens again tonight?
Who's that?
At the end of one season, our baby chickens have found ways into our garden. Okay. So and they can't find their way out. So what happens is the bottom gets loose at towards the end of the season. It rolls up a little bit, So they find little openings, but then I had to go rescue 2 and put them back in their coop tonight because they couldn't figure out how to get out. I know that
you can do goats on fairly limited land. We don't have goats. 1870s has new goats this year.
You can do sheep on small.
So I'm sure they would be happy to tell you about being new goat handlers.
Yeah. So anyway, we do need to get
Teresa Wheeler's in.
We haven't covered her question yet.
I think a simple question.
That is, but you know what? Let me get to the autumn olives first, because our featured forage food this week, which I can't say tonight, is the autumn olive. So down below in the description, you'll see a link to my webpage, Part-Time Permies webpage. If you want to follow along on that, you can. I have some pictures I'll share here as well. But autumn olives is actually one of our favorite fall foraging item. We forage this. We still have a bag of that we froze from last year, but we'll probably pick some more this year.
Somebody at the market yesterday was just telling me that's their favorite item, and they just love it. And I said, oh, well, we just have them growing all over the place.
Yeah, I know.
We can't. We have more than we even come close to knowing what to do with.
And it was actually, it is an invasive species. In some states, you're not allowed to cultivate it at all, but it does grow.
It'll show up anyway, so.
Well, it is a pioneer shrub, so it does move into poor soil, old farms, roadsides. They actually introduced it to help manage erosion, soil erosion on hills and things.
Well.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, as the soil builds up, it doesn't like to grow there anymore. It actually thrives on poor soil.
Sandy, poor soil, yeah.
Which is kind of what we have here, where on what used to be an 80-acre farm, that was then divided up, and we have a ton of autumn olives in our back. They do grow very fast, and they will spread quite quickly as well, and they have a ton of berries on them. So they are native actually to Asia, where it's often used as a food. In fact, there's a number of varieties in Asia as well. They are related to gummy berries, However, you got to watch this. I learned from my permaculture class. You do have to watch because there are certain places that try to sell you autumn olives as a gummy berry, which in some, primarily because in some states it's illegal to sell autumn olives to plant because they are so invasive in areas. Um, it was actually used around Ann Arbor quite a bit, and Ann Arbor and the surrounding areas has a huge number of autumn
Is
olive
it?
bushes. Apparently, it was mentioned in one of the foraging books I was listening,
Huh.
and because they were using it to help build their soil. It does,
Soil's different. I mean, there it's a
yeah,
fairly flat. There's obviously erosion happens at any
yeah.
area, but
But there's
I
a
would
lot
say
of
there's more
surrounding
limited.
farms.
Yeah, there's a lot of farms, a little more
Yeah,
limited erosion, and not nearly as sandy because it's on the east side of the state.
yeah,
So
where
it's
yeah.
totally different than
But
we have.
it's not so much that it needs sandy soil; it just needs poor soil.
Yeah,
So soil is
it's
basically used up.
clay. I think Ann
Yeah,
Arbor is more clayey.
yeah,
From we grew up there, so that's
yeah. So we know that area
so we know
fairly
that
well.
contrast pretty well. Yeah.
Although I don't think my parents have it on their property, which is interesting.
But
But
they're more heavily old wooded, so it would
they
have.
are there. So it is actually one of the few plants that's not a legume that does fix nitrogen. It has a different symbiotic relationship with the bacteria. So it does help build the soil back up, which is probably another reason why it's a pioneer plant. Pioneer plants move into poor soil or um, stripped areas, whether it's because of fire or something else. They're the first ones to move in that area, and then others will follow it um, later. So basically, in a succession. So this is one of the first bushes that moves into an area.
And it is good for chop and drop and compost because it grows a lot. It probably grows 5 feet a year once it's
Yeah,
established.
yeah,
So the bad news is you're always trimming, and we have it out against some paths, so
yeah. We just trim it
it's
back
easy
over
to
time.
trim because it's soft wood. So if you're
Yeah,
building hugelkulturs or compost, and you need that small gauge soft wood, which is moderate carbon,
yeah.
it's probably good for that.
So I will show you a picture here. This is a picture of, I don't have any big pictures of the whole bush. The bush can get up to around 16, 18 feet
Most
high.
most of ours are under 10 or 12 feet, but they
Yeah,
get pretty big.
they could bush out quite a bit. Um, some of them will have a lot more berries in bunches on the branches, but they have these little red berries in the fall, little yellow flowers in the spring, and an easy way to identify them is by turning their leaves over. They're very silvery on the underside of the leaves. The top side is more of a dull kind of medium green, but the bottom side of those leaves
And so
are,
the rounded
yeah,
pointiness and the silvery looks kind of like an olive leaf for
yeah,
those of you who've been to the Mediterranean or California. However, an olive leaf is thinner, longer,
yeah.
and more silvery, but it has a resemblance.
And there is a, uh, I'm trying to remember the name of the plant, but there's another plant that is a Russian something or other that actually has longer leaves. Might be Russian olive or something that has a longer leaf plant. It has a similar red berry as autumn olives, but that's maybe somewhat where it gets
The
some
other
of the
the other thing
names.
is it's kind of got a speckled berry that turns red, which kind of looks like a mini olive,
Yeah,
but it's very tannic for a long time until it sweetens up, and so olives are very tannic to the point you can't eat them until you ferment them.
yeah,
So it has a resemblance to a behavior of a olive when
but
it
it has nothing to do with
has
it.
nothing to do with it. It doesn't
Yeah,
end up tasting like an olive. An
not
olive
at all.
ripens to oil, not sugar. So
Yeah.
that is different, but it has a funny
It is.
resemblance
It's
to a.
it's it is definitely a bit astringent as the berries get darker and darker red. They're tiny berries. I mean, we're talking about a half a centimeter
Yeah.
um long and then less width, but they're speckled. It's hard to see in this picture, but they are
And those
speckled
look
and
redder, than those are
white.
very ripe. This time they don't necessarily have to be that red. There are and these
The green
are
ones,
oval.
yeah,
There are round, brighter red berries that come earlier. They look more like currants, but they're not. That show up on a semi-similar bush. They're pretty much done by now. They're
yeah, but
poisonous.
don't.
Don't confuse them. They're softer. They're not speckled. They're round. They're
Yeah,
semi-poisonous.
but they also fruit earlier.
Yeah,
So
they should be done.
these are the two main identifying factors is the berries have the speckling of white or silvery speckles on that red berry, and the underside of those leaves are silvery. Those other trees don't have those
No.
silvery leaves. So,
They have a softer, gooier fruit.
yeah.
These will taste almost like when you have a grape that is very tart, and then the tannic of like wine grapes
Yeah.
that is bitter. Even when they're sweet, they still have a little bit of that. So it's got a pretty, cranberry with a bitter flavor that's pretty identifiable.
Yep. So, other things that are kind of interesting. So, you could do a lot with these berries. We've only just started snacking on them. I I snack on them when I go run on our paths and back, which I need to start
They
doing
have a
again.
little seed in them.
They do.
You could almost treat them very similar to a pomegranate seed, a fresh pomegranate fruit. Because of that tart and the little
Hmm.
crunch, you could replace, because we don't grow pomegranates there,
Nope.
you could directly replace that anywhere you use pomegranate in salads and things, I would say.
Yep.
Fresh
So,
use pomegranates.
nutritionally, autumn olives are very high in lycopene, 18 times the amount as tomatoes. And that actually is a phytochemical that helps a lot of things, helps prevent macular degeneration, cataracts, helps promote prostate health, helps reduce cardiovascular disease, and does
It
have
does
some
have really good cancer.
it's an
It's
antioxidant.
one of the best
Yeah,
natural antioxidants, which then potentially can
absolutely.
delay or reduce cancer
Now
risk.
the interesting thing about the lycopene though, it's also what makes it red. And the red part of it is in the pulp and in the skin. The juice, if you juiced this, it actually will. I haven't tried this yet, but I heard it will actually make it look uh, like almost like dirty dishwasher water fluid, but it doesn't. It it tastes really sweet if the fruit is sweet. So you can actually get this really sweet liquid out of it and juice out of it, but it doesn't look as appetizing
Well, and
because
tomatoes are the same. So
yeah,
when you go to molecular and some modern thing, so what you can do is you can puree tomatoes, and then you can put them in a bag and let them drip. And when they drip, they will pour off tomato water, and tomato water takes out all the pulp and stuff. Is extremely concentrated and tomatoey. However, it's a very light, thin liquid that's barely white or
yeah.
barely red, and you get this burst of tomato. So some fancy chefs have gelled it and done different things. And tomato water was all the rage about 10 or 15 years ago, but it's a tool, and so it behaves the same way.
Um, the other thing as far as culinary uses, it's a berry. You can use it in different pastries and cobblers and pies and all that. It makes a fruit leather. So if you dehydrate it, you can make it into a fruit leather. That would be a highly concentrated snack. Jams and jelly, juice, wine. You could puree it and then use it for topping for yogurt or ice cream or whatnot. And our permaculture instructor actually had our class try a ketchup that he made completely out of autumn olives, which
I
had
haven't tried it yet.
you haven't tried it yet, but it tastes
You
just
need a
like
lot of
ketchup.
auto. I mean, we have to gather a lot of autumn olives to cook them down into
Yeah,
ketchup. Ketchup has probably more sugar in it than anything, actually. But if you could get a few gallon bags of it, I'm sure we could make a tomato sauce or ketchup of sorts with it.
but for those people who are trying to avoid eating some of the nightshades for health reasons, this would be basically a tomato replacer that grows naturally. That is
Doesn't grow as abundantly large amount of yield of fruit, I don't think. So you'd
Well,
have to.
ours are actually a little lighter fruit. There are some plants where you get huge bunches
Okay.
of autumn
I mean,
olives.
we get a lot of fruit because they're big bushes, but
Yeah,
the harvesting versus harvesting tomatoes would be a more cumbersome task.
yeah,
They don't rot particularly. They sit on the bush
no.
quite a while, so your ability to get out there and get a lot of them without having like tomatoes where you lose them quick,
And
that would be an advantage.
yeah, and they slowly ripen from basically mid-August all the way through fall. So
But they
you have
get
a
sweet
constant,
only in the late fall. So I would
yeah,
say harvest for jams, jellies, or ketchups as late as
late.
reasonable.
So it is kind of a fun one that we learned about from Nabi originally, um, but has have since learned about its uses in multiple other ways. So we did harvest some last year, but I want to harvest more this year and see what we could do with it. As far as our bushes don't have as many berries on them as some, but there's still so many bushes that we could get so many autumn olives off of them. Um, so I'm just going to take a look because I was looking at the webpage. And by the way, if you guys want to check that out, like I said before, there's a link down below.
To
I've
autumn
written up.
olives and the other weeklies.
Yeah, it's the webpage for Part-Time Permies. I do a weekly featured forage food on that. So this week's blog on that is for autumn olive with pictures and a bunch of text on it.
CBD oil. We are not users of CBD oil, so I don't know if we have a particularly strong opinion or great knowledge either way. My casual opinion is it's extremely popular right now, and it is the snake oil cure of everything. And like anything that's new or being rediscovered is way overemphasized how effective and how useful in as many
It might have its
things.
uses, but yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's more, and we will see as time goes on, as we shake down the medical data and the uses, how
That being said, I haven't looked up anything on
yeah,
it at this point.
how many uses are good and useful, and how multifactorial it is. Although there does seem to be some interest in a strong multifactorial uses, but it's probably being somewhat overused. I do know, and that's a purified CBD oil. I do know that cannabinoids, which involve other things in different forms
Yeah.
of purity, just I was listening to some stuff on NPR a few weeks
There
ago.
are studies on pain relief
Yeah,
and
pain relief and anti-cancer, on hunger
yeah,
and eating, and so there may be some really good uses. We don't have any need for any of them, and have not really investigated. I do know, just incidentally, there's things going on NPR and other stuff that people that do a lot of marijuana products, whether kind of pure or refined, CBD is a more refined item.
yeah,
Um, that there is an uptick of people taking on so much that they're actually getting gastrointestinal pains, extreme pain. Like this one guy, all he could do was stand in the shower um, to limit the pain,
yeah,
and they're finding where it used to be very rare. And these are people that would smoke or eat or take in a lot of marijuana, cannabinoid type products on a daily basis. Um, that they're finding people coming into the emergency room in like this massive pain and vomit. It's residual vomiting going on, and it kind of came back. And now nobody saw it, and now they're finding in the emergency rooms like, are you doing a lot of stuff?
yeah.
You need to back off because it's way overwhelming what your body's any good. It's harming your body. But that's sort of a different situation. So
Yeah, I mean anything can be overdone, really.
so the uptick of casual use and high use that's kind of taken place is being seen medically
Yeah,
and emergency wise, notably as a negative. So high intake, like anything, is a
probably
problem.
too much.
So, but that's
Yeah, that's
we're
a whole
not
nother
really.
man.
Otherwise, we're not experts.
Yeah, no, only actually what I've learned at our cancer center because they do have in Michigan medical marijuana licenses. So, um, but that's usually used more end stage high pain problems.
And I know a lot of arthritis, joint pain, other things.
Yeah,
People have suggested that it's helpful. Don't really know.
yeah.
Um,
Okay, so
so we do have
we
culinary question.
we do have one more culinary question. And Teresa, you're still in the room. I hope you're still here after that long talk.
Asking about spaghetti squash, asking for a
Favorite recipe
for spaghetti squash. I do enjoy spaghetti squash. I haven't had one
grown
for a
it.
while,
Yeah.
and we haven't grown it. I guess there's other things that we've grown instead, but I
Mm.
do enjoy it in reasonable amounts. And the texture's fun. So obviously roasting it so it becomes loose enough that you can scrape it out and you get the spaghetti or the strings, and it's pretty versatile. My mother used to put just tomato sauce on it like spaghetti noodles as a non-noodle
She's
thing.
probably still in the room.
It is. Mom, that's a terrible idea. I run a noodle company. What are you doing? Why would you take away the noodles and put vegetables down?
He makes noodles for a
Right
living.
now, I'm trying to make noodles for a living. It's not helping my living. But as a vegetable, I do enjoy it because it's kind of a nutty, mild flavor. It's got a nice texture, a little bit of a pop. It's different than all the rest of them. What I would do, actually, we like to saute it. So you scrape it out, you maybe chill it, and you put it in a saute pan with some butter or olive oil, your choice, or both, by the way, butter and olive oil together. It helps the butter from burning and
Mm.
it improves. So you have oleic acids in butter and you have other acids and flavors in olive oil. The two together are beautiful. So quick picked up, sauteed, and warmed up in olive oil and butter with salt and pepper is amazing, just as a side. You can add nutmeg or other spices to it and kind of season it like other pumpkin and squash. It's not extremely strong in flavor, so it's versatile as curry also. Curry spices, curry flavors,
Yeah,
or using it a bed for putting curried vegetables or meats and such on it.
that would be good. Okay, so that was our other. Trying to see if I missed anything else. Um, our
Tina says she recommends the results of CBD oil for herself for muscle and arthritis related things.
topical CBD oil.
Topical, oh, topical, yes.
Yeah.
At the farmers market, well, not the main farmers market, but some of the markets I sell at, the people are starting to sell various CBD products. My concern about those are always um, where they're coming from, the
Yeah.
purity and the strength, because there's lots of different companies, and just knowing more about that than the product.
Yeah, and there's lots of different plants that have different amounts
Yeah, there's so
of
knowing more
cannabinoids.
about how
Yeah.
it's being handled, just like any nutraceutical or
Yeah.
supplement. It's not so much the supplement; it's the processing, the handling, the dosing, and is it a very conscientious and reputable source? Because I don't know, buying my medications at the farmers market of somebody who clearly knows nothing about them but sells stuff concerns me if it was other medications. So
Yeah.
that would not be my source to buy any of my medications, other than natural food. uh,
Your mom's on a diet, so
Half
she's
spaghetti squash, half noodles. Yeah, and that's a good way to. It's a good way to cut down
the carbs.
some of the heavier carbs,
Yeah.
or add in different components, or bring down some of the starch components. Spaghetti
Yeah.
squash is still a
Yeah.
starch item, but it's got mostly water.
Yeah.
It's very low calorie, so it is a nice blend.
And Suburban Hillbilly needs a Primavera. Awesome. So yeah, that was a lot of suggestions. That wasn't just one favorite, was it? But lots of ideas. So yeah. And okay, so I'm just trying to see on my notes if I had anything else because it's actually after 10 already. Um, and
Primavera means first of the spring. I know we typically throw in all kinds of vegetables into cream sauce or garlic and oil or pesto. Primavera is a made up term, probably originating from California, and like I think
okay,
Wolfgang Puck was the
yeah,
one who made it popular. So they kind of coined something prima, first, vera, green, the first green.
green, huh?
So ideally, that should be your spring vegetables and should be only served right
Right
away
then.
whenever your season is. So that's going to be peas, little shoots and stems, maybe some baby carrots or turnips or radishes. That's going to be your first greens. And so it's going to be very lightly
Yeah,
tossed, typically in olive oil, maybe a little garlic or onion product,
but
and
it's
some
turned
herbs
into a
and
different term.
spices. Then the Primavera gets dumped into Alfredo sauce or a cream sauce and typically in restaurants over the last 20 years, it means whatever vegetables you got laying around get dumped into the cream sauce in place of whatever meat or such. So that's sort of a brainless use. It's not a terrible tasting thing, but it's sort of a brainless use and not a good knowledge of Primavera. Primavera does not exist in Italy, by the way, but neither does macaroni and cheese, neither does Alfredo. So we can go down the list of American favorites, and they either exist in a totally different form or are Americanized. So it's okay. That's fine. Just know that Primavera doesn't have a very long history, probably 1980s.
Yeah,
So, but it's a good dish. It's
yeah.
fun. But
By the way, I wanted to do a quick touch on updates with pudding. I have a couple pictures. One was a couple days ago. For those you don't know, Puddin is our Great Dane, and we just got her a month ago, and she's extremely shy, and we've been working on training her. Our video this week has been with training,
So
clicker
no
training,
large barnyard animals, but
and we do have a
we are training a new that's our new
giant dog.
project.
So Puddin is very shy, and this was actually the first time Mike was able to sit next to her on the couch
She was
without
very
her.
relaxed, and it was in the evening, and I
Yeah,
just had a sense that she seemed relaxed, and there was room enough to not bother her.
yeah.
And I kind of walked over there, and she seemed fine,
She
and
was watching
I
a little bit, and that was
sat down, and she was too lazy to get up, and so that was yep.
yeah.
So I was a
Usually,
little surprised, but I thought we might have a chance.
yeah. She usually gets up and moves away, and then the next day she was on the couch again. That's her favorite place. And I went in there and kind of did the same thing, and I was able to sit next to her. Not quite as
Thanksgiving
close.
Primavera sounds like a great idea, actually. Yeah, so plant all your little peas and beans and favas and cool, quick growing items and shoots and leaves, and do that as part of your Thanksgiving with all the other heavy stuff.
Huh.
And I do like that idea.
Yeah. Okay, one other. This was earlier today. This was Mike putting a treat, a little peanut butter on a piece of bread, and Helix. Now, Puddin has been putting up with Helix coming up to her more than us. So
Helix walked within 3 feet of her leg. Looked like he did
3 inches of her leg.
3 inches. Yeah, 3 inches. Helix likes to boop the previous dogs, boop them on their nose and
He
stuff,
would go headbutt them
and
on the nose.
headbutt them.
Yeah.
So he did not touch her, but he got with he kind of swayed over that way and then
Yeah.
meandered around. So
Yeah. He was thinking about it.
yeah, he was
He was gonna rub up
because
against
he
her
likes to
legs.
rub up on the dogs.
Yeah. He's done that a couple times to Puddin, and like when he went and headbutted her nose, she jumped up and backed off and was like, "What the heck are you doing?"
Yeah.
And then there was another time where I think he rubbed up against her and she jumped up, but she's afraid of the cat. The cat has figured it out and is not afraid of her at all. So yeah, thanks, Seven Sprouts. Yeah, she's coming along slowly.
Yeah, so she even when we give her treats and stuff,
Yeah,
uh, she still bounces back. Or one moment she'll take one or get close, and the next moment she won't take a treat from 10 feet away.
yeah,
But you got to entice her and get her brain to switch over to the food. So she wouldn't take a treat, and then I got her closer because I just had a little wheat bread with some peanut butter I was eating, and so
yeah.
she took it a little more, and then Helix was bopping around, and that's where Helix ended up. She also played twice in the last 2 days or 3 days.
Yeah, she's been playing with
She
Mike.
played with us, like in the yard. She would go
Nervous,
run back, run around, and woof, and run around and
and do
doggy play,
the
and
play bow
yeah,
that they do.
which we haven't seen much. In fact, she's been lazy. I don't know if she's slightly depressed or just lazy
Yeah,
without other dogs to exercise. So we haven't been able to exercise her, and because she doesn't play with toys,
yeah,
we haven't had a way to stimulate or get her to do anything. So this was the first time that twice that she would kind of run back and forth in the yard and bounce around. She looked good running around
yeah,
and looked
and
kind of
smiling.
smiling.
Yeah, yeah,
So she started to play a little bit. So those are actually three very big improvements
yeah,
after 3 weeks of one of the shyest dogs we've ever worked with.
yeah. So okay, and then I guess the other thing we've been doing in the garden is trying to get our harvest in, which we have a lot more to do, but this is the variety we are pulling right now. 2
Mm-hmm.
types of tomatoes I pulled that day, but we have more out there. Ground cherries, tomatillos, beans of all
We got a lot of
types.
stuff we need to freeze because we just can't eat it or process
Yeah,
it in other ways fast enough.
we have the watermelons we just pulled in. We grew a small
Small
variety.
varieties. Yep.
We pulled the other type of watermelon a few weeks
Yeah,
ago.
we got to eat those. We're gonna lose. They're
Yeah,
really small because they were stunted.
we have basil. We have a couple types of basil. That is hot peppers, sweet peppers,
Mm-hmm.
okra, cucumbers. We just pulled all the cucumbers because the vines are dying.
Yeah.
Our squash vines in general are
We
dying
got
off.
crazy, kind of like almost nine.
Oh,
Excuse me, like mid 90s,
yeah.
and it was rained every 2 or 3 days, and it was humid every day,
It's just
and it got a little cool in the morning, so we got dew. So we had super humidity for
yeah.
about 2 3 weeks, and that just really took its toll. We got a little bit of blight on a few tomatoes, but the melons and squash and stuff that don't do
Yeah.
well really suffered, which
Oh,
is
and
common.
Eggplant was the other thing in that picture.
Oh yeah, the eggplants love our soil. We need
Yeah,
to plant more.
yeah.
We didn't really get enough
We got
eggplants in this year.
Yeah, we got about 4 eggplant plants
They
in.
didn't bear a lot this year.
Well, they're
We need to
really
do more.
just starting, it seems.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were very stunted.
yeah.
We didn't get the heat, and they
We
actually did fine once we got the heat, even though it
Yeah,
was dry. They finally took off.
but okay. But I think that's about all I have on our updates, puppy update. We'll have about 3 or 4 videos. I have 4 recorded that I need to edit. So lots coming on another update. If for those of you guys who remember Lucky, my goose, who's a guard goose, and Houdini, his girlfriend, we're gonna have another story on them coming up. Um, we have tasting our apples for the first time and figuring out what kinds they are. We have more garden work and coop work.
Yes, Tina. Yes, Tina. Great Dane's stomachs flipping or bloat.
Yes,
Yes, we lost a Great Dane
to
about
that.
this time last year, right around now, to bloat. We had a Saint Bernard that we saved a
Yeah,
number of years ago, which we've lost to cancer a year and a half ago. So yes, we know a lot about that. This Great
yeah.
Dane has attacked stomach, so it should not. It's a very low risk, but it was just a year ago that
We
our
lost
other
Jello.
Great Dane, and then we didn't catch it fast enough and
We weren't home.
traumatic damage and could not save him. So
Yeah. So yeah, um, so yeah, I'm very happy that this dog's stomach is tacked so it can't flip.
any of the really large chested dogs that have extra room sort of in there
Yeah.
are prone
Because
more or
they don't
less.
have their stomachs, generally dog stomachs are not attached, so if their chest is deeper there's a lot more room for it to move. So the Danes, the Saint Bernards, I think the Weimies as well, the Weimaraners, the Dachshunds, little dog with the deep chest, all of them have bloat issues and you
Yeah.
gotta watch.
So you can tack them basically a string to the stomach wall. It's fairly easy. It's a little bit expensive, if you're, mostly due to the sedation, but it's that is a really good thing to do. One in what
Hi, Bree.
1 in 4, 1 in 5 Danes end up having bloat,
Yeah, about 1 in 5 Danes
and
from what I
Saint
read.
Bernards it's like 1 in 5 or 6.
Yeah, it's a
So
little
7.
less frequent for Saint Bernards. It's
Um,
highest frequency in Danes of all breeds.
so
Yeah,
that takes out a big investment and a big part of your life real quick. So
yeah.
for the small amount of money and time, I think it's almost breeders don't really tell you so much about it. I guess some breeds and it's sort of random when it happens. There may be
Yeah.
things that promote it, but for the most part, it's kind of random.
There's a lot of speculation on what causes it, whether it's playing after they eat or whether it's
Eating
eating lying down,
styles.
eating standing up, eating.
Basically, you stimulate the muscles to do all. It's Dr. John doing all in all the right places at the wrong time.
Yeah.
It's doing all the wrong things at the right time, and some randomness that all the muscles contract and cause a flip. Of course, it happens to cows and
Cows
stuff.
is
So
actually a slightly different
yes,
mechanism, but
yes,
yeah,
people can have their intestines, portions of them move around,
intestines, yes. Stomachs, not so much.
which is similar damage and debilitating and serious.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, you guys, if you want any t-shirts, feel free to purchase. I gave you guys the link in there before. We got to wrap up tonight because it
Yep.
is getting late
We
and
got
I have to work tomorrow.
one quick question from
What's
Carrie.
that?
Roasting vegetables, starchy, rooty vegetables like potatoes, beets, onions, etc. Yes, generally the harder items will roast 45 minutes to an hour. It really depends on the size. So the larger the size, the lower the heat, between 350 and 400. Small like cubes, so those are like inch cubes. If you're doing say centimeter cubes or even down to quarter inch, then you gotta, because they dehydrate, you gotta blast it at you know 475, 500. So size is the most important thing on timing. Separating out things by their type, so you can just keep them going their um, based upon their variety, so you can pull things off the tray. Beets will roast in a fairly similar period of time as a potato, maybe even a little longer. Beets are also weird because they can be really sweet and juicy, or they can be really bitter and earthy and minerally, and they'll cook again on based on their size and based upon where they grew. They will cook very differently. I find roasting beets, I just got to keep checking them and seeing if they yield to a pin, to a probe because the timing is not the same. There is a really good thing. I think it's Chef Steps has a good deal on roasting vegetables, and you can roast almost any vegetable. You want to separate out your starchy and your heavier root vegetables, carrots, potatoes, beets, turnips, rutabaga, all that stuff can be roasted in kind of columns or sections about the same temperature, a little lower, longer, till they soften because you're breaking down the heavy fiber. All onions are kind of in between that. It really varies on the chunks because they can get sweet and you can roast long a big chunk of tomato, a big chunk of onion. All your other things, squashes, spring onions, tomatoes, they all grill and roast great too, but you're going to run hotter and shorter. And then you can go combine all that stuff back together. I do lots of melanges with pumpkins and squashes in the winter, Brussels sprouts, and then recombine. I preset them, recombine them, maybe add fruit or nuts or other components and herbs, brown butter, and present those with a lot of the things that I cook because they're varied and they're cost effective, but they're really good food. Yeah. And I can,
get a lot of variety.
People don't do it. It's very attractive and it serves plates really well. So I think you're on the right track, but it's a little bit of a check them, taste them, keep them separated. But Chef Steps, I don't know if it's in their free section or paid. Really nice discussion of roasting different types of vegetables.
Cool. And I just wanted, okay, where was it? Tina, actually, I wanted to ask you, you said you just joined us, started watching us. Are you the Tina, because the names are different here than Facebook. Are you the same Tina who was asking the root question on Facebook? Who I think came over from
Tina Marie.
Yeah, Tina Marie on Facebook. Is that the same as Tina Nustolar? That's the question. Because I think it came in at the end of the roux discussion. So if you want to watch the replay after it resets, then that's fine.
That's about as technical as it gets, unless you want to pay me for professional services. That's a fairly technical discussion because people don't realize it's simple, but the reasons behind it is and then if you understand that, you now have a lot of ability to work with your thickening and get really good results.
Yeah. So I just want to double check that.
150 pounds of commercial beets. Are you crazy, Carrie, or do they fall off a truck? Or are you feeding them to your animals?
Wow. That's a lot of beets.
Feeding most of the goats. Okay. I love beets. Commercial beets, by the way, tend to be very good. I find that beets that are larger are usually sweeter and better. The baby beets can be sweet, but like many baby vegetables have not had time to develop sugars and can be disappointing or kind of variable in the quality.
Especially a root vegetable, because a lot of root vegetables are a lot sweeter in the fall.
In the fall, they've developed all their sugar, and then you change the temperature.
And some of them, some of them even after the first frost.
And beets, 50-pound bags of beets or boxes of beets are pretty darn inexpensive. They're really good. In fact, I will ask for the extra large ones that are about this size because they're easier to clean. I enjoy beets in quite a few ways. I like them actually raw. Now you got to watch a beet because they can be very mineral and tannic, and you can actually they have a lot of iron in them. Sometimes you can taste the iron in the roof of your mouth. Some people don't like beets because I think their body doesn't need all the iron and needs some and all the minerals in them. There may be a reason they don't care for them.
I'm wondering if that, who knows? I don't like red beets, most red beets. I like the sweet ones, and the gold ones seem sweeter to me. But I like sweet.
I think there's other minerals in there. So you can get not very sweet beets, which aren't good. They should be sweet. Yeah. You can get ones that are sweet, but they're very mineral to a point where you get a tang or a tingle on your mouth, and it's hard to bring that away, get that away. And then you can get ones that are just super sweet. As you roast them, they sweeten. So there's two options. You can roast them in the jacket. Okay. Well, good. Yeah, so we had a pretty long discussion on roux.
Yeah, she was here.
Oh, good.
She was here. She couldn't run the chat part.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Hopefully that was helpful and not overdone, but it's a big topic. And I teach that professionally as well as the techniques of making roux. Yeah. We did some roux, by the way. If you go back to our Thanksgiving series, we do pan gravy.
Yes.
And I do a roux pan gravy, and there is some discussion and a preparation of a gravy from a stock.
Yeah, we
So if
have,
you're interested in that and
yeah,
how we kind of develop it, we did it in our home kitchen, but in a professional manner.
yeah.
Go back and watch that video.
There's um there's a whole series on holiday cooking that we released right before Christmas. It was our Thanksgiving meal, but it could be a Christmas meal as well, and had a lot of roasted vegetables, a lot of um, uh, the pan graving was a major part of. I think we did a whole video on that, so check that out. It was last end of November, early December when we released that.
Oh, so you did get feed beets. Okay, so feed beets are just a rough,
Free
large.
beats.
Yeah, but feed.
Oh,
They were
oh,
the feed. So that I was wondering about that. So
yeah.
those are really cheap, and generally, food destined beets are pretty inexpensive too. They're just gonna be bigger and rougher. They have a lot of beet pulp and fiber. Actually, gets put into animal feed as a filler, like dog food. It's not necessarily bad because they need they need to clean their systems out too. But too much of it is, they don't break it down. Whereas a cow or goats would actually break it down. So rutabaga is something else that I worked with a Spanish chef, and he's like, "What are they? Like the rutabaga?" He goes, uh, he
They
goes,
don't know what they are.
he goes, "Oh, we fed those to the cows. They loved them." He goes, "We don't eat those." I said, "Try them. They're pretty good." Now again, they're feed, so of course cows would love them because they're sweet. So if you roast beets with a little bit of oil on them, any cheap oil, don't put good oil on, and a little salt on them, or even on a bed of salt, they will, as you roast, the starches convert to sugars and they get sweeter, but they also dehydrate, which means they start to collapse down and concentrate.
Hmm.
So you can roast them and then cool them. The hard part is the skin tends to stick, and you've got to peel them possibly with a knife.
Mm.
If you douse them with a little oil and some salt and put them in tin foil and roast them again for 45 minutes to sometimes an hour and a half, they'll basically yield with a pin or a probe.
They get softer.
They'll get soft because they steam, but they
All
don't
right.
concentrate as much. And the other option, which can go a little faster, is you can boil them. Put them in water. I do heavily salted water, like pasta almost, and I simmer them. Now, if you really want to make them good, do moderately salted water, add a bunch of red wine vinegar, like a cup of, quite a bit. Or for a while, had some good wood aged red wine vinegar. It was kind of expensive, but we had a lot of it. It was a place where I could use it, and I learned to cook them that way, and we would actually impart the wood flavor. Now that it cooks faster, the skin will slip right off with a finger, as it cools down a little bit, or a rag, or gloves because you'll be really stained up. And you can slip off the skin so it's nicer, but because it's not dehydrated, if anything, it's taken on a little water, you're not concentrating the flavors, but you can impart a little more of the salt. And whenever you cook beets, you tend to add a lot of vinegar. Again, if you have to use white vinegar, cider vinegar, that's fine. Because the water soluble dyes in beets comes out aggressively. Now, it's going to come out no matter what, and there's so much of it. But if you acidify it, acetic acid and white vinegars, um, that will help hold some of the um, more of the dye in, and at that point you can clean them. So they will sweeten up with cooking, but I do like them grated. I like them roasted a lot. I don't mind them boiled and then kind of pickled or put into a sweet and sour with vinegar and herbs and olive oil, sometimes walnut oil and toasted nuts. Do a lot of salads, cold salads that way on buffets. Then you add goat cheese or blue cheese to it,
Mm.
and it's amazing. Um, other roasted vegetables, pumpkins, turnips, whatever, a whole slew of things. But you have to watch the beets and either add them at the very end or not add them, because
We'll turn
if you
everything
keep
colors.
stirring it around, it will stain the whole thing and it doesn't present well. So yeah, beets are actually crazy versatile. Even people that don't like them, I think when you cook them and you start manipulating them, and they don't just taste like the canned ones, you could probably convert at least half of the non-likers to this is pretty good.
Yeah.
Also combine them with things like um, sweet items. So you can add orange sections. Traditional is glazing vegetables. Even white potatoes glaze very nice. So you cook them out most of the way in in chunks, and then take a little chicken stock or just water or vegetable stock, whatever you got. Classical kitchen use chicken stock or veal stock for everything, but and then you add sugar, salt, white pepper, maybe a touch of nutmeg or allspice, or and you cook that down till it thickens, thickens, thickens until it glazes, and you actually get a candy coat glazing on it, and you keep sauteing it in a small amount in a pan, and you glaze the vegetable. So now it is artificially sweetened with white sugar. You can even add a little honey.
Um, so glazed vegetables works awesome. Turnips, which are more bitter and not as sweet, glazed turnips are crazy good. Glazed beets will bleed like crazy, so don't ever use them on a competition plate or anything that matters, although they taste good. And you can even glaze white potatoes, and you can caramelize the sugar if you want. And if it's too sweet, add some lemon juice at the end or some vinegar because you want that sweet sour, not just sweet. Salt, pepper, white pepper preferably, lemon juice or wine vinegars or cider vinegars to balance it, and you get amazing root vegetables. It costs you almost nothing.
Yeah.
So,
We really do need to wrap up because it's almost 10:30. We've been going
yep.
for an hour and a
Well,
half,
I came late.
a couple minutes.
I was mopping the floor.
um, but we will be back next week. If you do have more cooking
I
questions,
like pickled beets. A lot of people don't. I like them.
if you do have more cooking questions, you can always leave a question in our Facebook group, or I'll try to remember earlier in the day to put out that question out there if anyone has cooking questions to get this guy going all night if you can. But um, but then we'll try to, if we get a lot of questions, we might have to pick just one or two to cover in a session and then maybe reply on the
Oh, it depends
Facebook
on
page.
whatever else we have going on. But yep,
Yeah. But
I'll be sending bills. I usually run at about $300 an hour for that type of stuff.
that would be nice. No. So, but we will be back next week, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, every Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you guys for joining us. Please feel free to like on your way out. It does help our
T-shirts if you're interested.
t-shirts if you're interested. You can scroll back to that link, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.